Hey there, my name's Rod Yates, and you are listening to Humans of Music, a Jaxsta podcast. This is where I talk to music creators and industry professionals about their life and career, the ups and downs of their journey, and the lessons they've learned along the way. And my guest today is solo artist and Queen vocalist Adam Lambert. What do you do when your life becomes tabloid fodder and your sexuality becomes a subject of public interest? For Adam Lambert, coming second in the 2009 season of American Idol exposed him to this kind of scrutiny, and he had to learn quickly how to deal with that while also navigating the ups and downs of a career in pop. Of course, when it comes to scrutiny, it would be hard to think of a more pressure-filled position than singing for Queen, something Adam has been doing with great aplomb since 2012. We talk about all that and more in this interview, which took place at Adam's hotel in Sydney when he was in town recently. He was here to promote his latest solo album, Velvet, and there's a song on the record called Stranger You Are, in which Adam sings, "Papa told me to stay strong, to tighten up my bootstraps before I get walked on." And I started by asking Adam about that lyric and how true to life it is.
My dad is great. I have a really good relationship with my father, and I remember early on kind of feeling like a weird kid, you know, and getting to that age where you know, boys would make fun of me, and you know, I felt different, and I knew I felt different. And I was lamenting to my father one day, and he was like, you know, he's like, those kids that do that. And he was good. He knew what to say. He was like, those are the kind of guys that never end up doing anything with their fucking life. They'll end up, you know, bald and fat with, you know, 7 kids and miserable in whatever job they fell into, and they'll feel stupid for making fun of somebody that is different. Yeah. And, you know, he was basically saying to me, it gets better, before that catchfreeze was popular, which was really great.
How are you different?
You name it. There's a laundry list. I was just a creative kid. You know, I was always wanting to play dress up. I was in theater outside of school, so that was sort of my escape, and that was my passion. And, you know, I would get back into class and in regular school, and kids wouldn't know about it because this was an outside of school activity. So it was just sort of, I was just a little creative unicorn. Yeah. I wanted it to be Halloween every day of the year. I was really into dressing up. Okay. Costume, makeup, hair, shoes, and doing what I could with what I had, which was quite little. Yeah. You know, making outfits out of sheets, and I love transforming and creating.
But you must have had some tough times then. I mean, because some people wouldn't understand that, particularly kids.
There were definitely people that didn't understand. I mean, thankfully, I grew up in Southern California, so there are worse places to grow up as a weird kid. But I did a lot of drawing. That was sort of an exercise for my imagination that was really helpful. It was. I will say though, like, I wasn't severely bullied. I don't consider myself a huge victim in that way. I was a big boy, so a lot of the kids didn't want to mess with me because I was taller than a lot of them a lot earlier. So, right, you know, I held my own. There was one kid in high school that I got into an almost fight. I was in PE, physical education, and we were playing like capture the flag or something, and there was this girl in my PE class who I was really good friends with, who was like my solace, because PE was not my thing, as I'm sure you're not surprised about. And she was like my buddy. We were laughing all the time. And this one boy on the other team was this like little crappy, like 3rd string football player kid who was like, you know, desperately trying to be cool with the football players, but never got put in and all that stuff. Little guy, not attractive. He started calling us names, and then he hit her, this girl. Really? Smacked her, because she got sassy with him. And that just triggered something in me. You know, I am a weird kid, but my dad taught me chivalry, like was really good about like, this is how you treat women. This is what, you know, he was really like traditional that way. And I got really enraged, and I went after this kid, and he started calling me every name in the book, the F name, the G name, the, you know, every name. And I just popped him in the face. I just punched him once, and he fell down. And I remember feeling like rage. I was like, oh my God, I'm so angry. And my PE teacher called me over, who now in hindsight I realize was probably a lesbian. She was like very butch, very, very cool. Like, she got me. And so I'm thinking like, she was probably queer, right? Yeah. Probably still is. And she said to me, she's like, you know, we have a 0 tolerance policy at our school. You're not supposed to get in any sort of physical altercation whatsoever. It's not allowed. I'm supposed to give you, a write-up for that. And I was like, yeah, but she goes, he's an asshole. Don't worry about it. Just don't tell anybody that I let you off. So she saw the whole thing happen and let me go. So, yeah.
Nice. Because there is another line in that song about, because the stranger you are, they want to keep you locked in the dark.
Yeah.
And does that hark back to that time, or is that something that you've experienced throughout your life?
I think this song is sort of like, it's interesting because it's euphoric and kind of celebratory, but it is sort of head-on addressing that people can be really shitty. People can be mean, and if you're different, a lot of people will want to put you down or lock you up or silence you or any of these things. So it's an interesting lyric because it's really just kind of saying it. It never actually says, but don't worry, it just kind of says it, which I found really interesting. It's an interesting angle.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you know what? I'm weird, and like that's it. I'm gonna be a strange queer boy and live my life.
Yeah.
And I think what it does, I think by acknowledging it and saying that this is the way the world is, it's like you have a choice whether or not you're affected by it, whether or not you want to lean into it or create your own reality.
Yeah.
And Velvet's such an escape. It's such an escapist record. Even when we're talking about real things, it's got this transporting kind of quality, I think, or at least that's what I try to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That sentiment we were talking about before with, I guess, that lyric, they want to keep you locked in the dark, and what you were telling me about with your experiences growing up. Did that make you, at least in the early part of your career, kind of crave acceptance? Was there ever a part of you that wanted to be accepted? Oh,
absolutely. Yeah. I remember being a student and looking at the popular kids, and I was like, oh, wow, cool, And I think getting into performing is definitely a part of that. That's like most performers will tell you. That's like whether or not they realize it at the time or ever realize it. That is a part of our psyches, that we want love. We want validation. We want a pat on the back, and we want to feel like we're good at something. And all those things are true about me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's tough though, isn't it? Because you're in an industry where you don't always get that validation, and quite often you get the exact opposite.
Yeah. And the music industry has been tricky that way. And I remember when it all started after American Idol, I was so excited. I was like, oh my God, this is my opportunity. This is my shot. And I didn't really know what to expect. And quickly over the next year, there were plenty of roadblocks and snags as well as victories. So I started learning quickly, like, you just have to roll with the punches, because it is like you don't know what you're going to get.
Talking about Idol, I guess that was the first time ever that you had your life under public scrutiny.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you have the tabloids covering you. You have Entertainment Weekly doing stories on you.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. How did you navigate that? How did you come to terms with that?
I'm very thankful that I had been living in LA for the majority of my 20s, because I was 27 when I was doing Idol. So 19 to 27, I was in Hollywood. And obviously I wasn't, I hadn't made it yet, but I was around it. In LA, you're adjacent to everything. You see a celebrity next to you at a grocery store. You're at a club next to so-and-so. So I think the idea of celebrity didn't seem as foreign or as scary to me as it might have had I not been around it. I'm really thankful for that. I think that it prepped me for that world a little bit better. But it's still strange, and it's still surreal. And there were moments that were overwhelming and scary. And you start sort of getting too objective about yourself. And then it sort of depersonalizes you a little bit in moments. You're like, why am I thinking about it that way? Because you start thinking like your fans or like the tabloids, and you have to kind of get back to going, okay, let's tune it all out. Got to tune out that noise and stick with your gut, stick with your intuition. But it takes discipline.
Yeah. How do you think like the tabloids? What do you mean by that?
You just start believing what you read. You start, someone criticizes you and you go, oh yeah. The negativity can creep in.
Okay.
You could subscribe to it if you're not careful.
And how far into that sort of journey did it take you?
I think like that first year, I was definitely on a roller coaster of like, what? And then after my first album and stuff, I think slowly but surely after that first initial big hype spike, I started to adjust more and more.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were born in Indiana.
Yeah.
Raised in San Diego.
Yep.
Why the move? Why did your family move?
Because it's Indiana. It's kind of a shit place, to be honest with you. Truthfully, my father got a job opportunity in San Diego.
Okay.
And they both went, well, that sounds nice, you know? So, yeah.
Was he in telecommunications or was
Yeah.
he in... Okay.
Yeah.
And your mum's in dental
She
hygienist?
was a dental hygienist, yeah, up until I was about 12 or 13.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I mean, they're both, I suppose, quite middle class occupations. And how then, what informed your sense of that desire to dress up and that desire to perform? Was there anything in particular?
I do think that it was a family tradition that we had every Thanksgiving, which is our big family holiday. My family would put a movie together. We would pick some movie that was well known and we would parody it. And everyone would have a character and we would know the story. None of it was really scripted. It was all sort of improv and pretty horribly done. Like no one was really an actor. But we had so much fun doing it. You know, and the adults were all drinking wine and the kids were like dressing, and we would dress up and it was fun.
Yeah.
And it was all make-believe and it was all play. And we would film it and then we would all sit down and watch it. And I think that's where the acting bug hit me. I think that's where the performing bug first hit me before anything.
Okay.
Just seeing the whole family come together in a project and play and make believe, and I think that was the beginning of it for me.
How old would you have been?
I mean, from the time I was like a little toddler. Like
Okay.
that was our tradition. So, and I remember the first time like I had a part. You know, I was probably 4 or 5.
What was the part?
I think they were doing a parody of the Johnny Carson show.
Okay.
Of like a talk show. So it wasn't a film that year. It was like, let's do a talk show.
Yeah.
And I was some guy that was being interviewed about typing. I don't know, something about how I would had a typewriter and I was like the fastest typer in the world or some stupid thing. And we were just improving. My uncle and he was pretending to be Johnny Carson and they were all laughing. So I was getting attention and that was it.
The die was cast.
Yeah.
So your parents, they had an interest in theater or acting or entertainment?
I think music. My father was a DJ in college, and his record collection was intense. I mean, he had a whole wall of albums, and he was really into music. And my mom had a lot of albums too. She was really into music, and I think the other childhood thing that went down for me to watch and sort of be inspired by before I got into theater was that my dad was maybe this was around the same time I was in theater. My dad started a garage band with some of his buddies from work. And they would just play cover music and play at barbecues and parties that them and their friends would have. My dad played keys. And it was just cool to be around live instruments and to see the joy, how it brought people together in a party atmosphere. And that was my first time hearing a lot of these classic rock standards that I know now. They would play stuff by the Stones and they didn't play any Queen, funny enough.
Is that...
But they tried, some Bowie. There was a lot of rootsy kind of Americana stuff being played, the Eagles.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's very funny because I look back on it now and I'm like, oh, it's just it all kind of makes sense. All those influences you sort of take for granted as they're coming. But
yeah. So that was important to your musical upbringing, all those.
I think it showed me something.
Artists.
Yeah, okay. Absolutely.
And in terms of your experiences in the theater, which you were talking about earlier, which you did as a kid, did your parents kind of put you into theater because you were quite hyperactive as a kid? Am I right in thinking that?
I had a lot of energy. I don't think I was clinically hyperactive, but I had a lot of energy. I was a kid, and kids need outlets. That's how all kids are, And I think they tried to put me in a couple different sports programs. I didn't like it. I don't want to do this. This is not my thing. And knowing how I was playing dress up all the time, they're like, maybe you just need to be on stage. And so they figured it out and they put me in a theater group.
And was that a safe space? Because you were
It was safe and it was instant. It was I instantly took to it. And it was I found my thing. And they saw that and they were like, I think we found his thing. You know? Yeah.
And is your first performance, was it You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown?
Mm-hmm. Well, you have done your research.
What did you play?
I was playing Linus.
Okay.
Yeah, with the blanket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you remember the feeling when you walked out on stage in front of an audience?
I had a song, and I remember the first time doing it and just that feeling of being in front of an audience, a captive audience, first of all, and just learning very quickly that people want to have a good time out there. Just help them have a good time.
After the break, Adam talks about his journey on American Idol and the huge learning curve that came in the aftermath of that show. Welcome back to Humans of Music and my interview with Adam Lambert. After growing up in San Diego, Adam moved to Hollywood to pursue his love of performing, and we pick up the conversation talking about that move.
I think right up until I moved there, I thought I saw myself going to New York to pursue musical theater. That was sort of the big dream. And because I was so involved with outside theater productions during high school, my grades suffered a little bit. Mm-hmm. I wasn't a bad student, but I wasn't a competitive enough student to get into one of the good musical theater universities. I thought, I'll go to NYU. That'll be great. Or I want to go to, or Boston, like one of these East Coast kind of well-known arts schools. And I just couldn't get admitted because I just hadn't put enough time to my studies and to my all the stuff that you need to do. I don't know how it is here, but in the States, it is so competitive to get into schools.
Right. Well, I imagine for performing arts schools like of that quality.
I mean, it's just like so competitive. So that didn't happen, and I ended up. My parents were like, "Well, you have to go to college." I'm like, "Do I?" And so I got. Do I though? And so I got admitted to like a California state school that had a good arts program in Orange County, and I enrolled and I moved up there. And right as classes were supposed to start, a production of Grease that I had been cast in was starting right at the same time. And I was playing a small supporting role with one song, but this was a semi-professional production. I was getting paid. I was earning points to become a professional.
Yeah.
And I'm so bad at multitasking that I was like fully engrossed in this production during the first 5 weeks of school. I went to school like 4 times.
Right.
I was like just not into it. Plus I was having to commute all the way back down to San Diego and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So by week 5, I was like, I've fallen so far behind. Screw this.
You're done.
I don't even need to, I don't want this. I just want to work. I just want to be on stage. I'm out of school. I just did it for 12 years. I just want to work. And so I quit. My father was like, whoa. I mean, if you think you're just going to drop out of school and I'm going to pay for your life, and I was like, okay, I'll get a job. And, I got a retail job and just started pounding the pavement. And then shortly thereafter moved to LA to try to take it to the next level. And kept thinking to myself, I should move to New York, but I can't really afford it. I'm a little intimidated.
Yeah.
And so I pursued theater in LA, which is sort of an oxymoron. Like there's just not a lot of theater there, but that's what I did for the next, almost 10 years.
And you mentioned you were in retail. Were there any other jobs that you had to do to keep the lights on?
It was retail. It was all retail, like clothing, cosmetics. I did like a couple, I worked for as a performer, I did like a corporate entertainment gig where we would dress up like waiters and like break out in a song in the middle of an event, which was fun. It's called the Three Waiters, like the Three Tenors. Okay. So it was all like classical, like kind of opera kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah, and there was just lots of random gigs. I did a cruise ship. That was early. That was like a year after I dropped out of school. I got into this cruise ship.
Well, I was going to say, that time leading up to Idol, you were still employed. I think you were an understudy on Wicked and 10 Commandments, the musical with Val Kilmer. What was that like? What was working with Val Kilmer like?
Oh, it was a very interesting. It was a terrible production. Anybody that did it will be like, God, it was pretty bad, wasn't it? There was some good music written for it, but just the direction and it just was messy.
Okay.
And they like attached this. The people producing it had never done anything in the theater before. They were a fashion company, so they had money, and the costumes looked good. But that was about it. It was sort of like they're just stabbing in the dark, and it was funny because they had hired like a whole. The entire cast were professionals, were like the best of the best, some from New York, mostly from LA, all the best talent, professional performers, and no one running it was a professional. So it was just like, oh, what are we doing? And then Val came in to give it name value, but he was really intimidated, I think, by all the singers. And it was interesting. Yeah. It was interesting. But he was friendly with me. We got along really well.
Okay.
Yeah. I actually posted a picture today of that on my Instagram.
Okay.
A picture from that time.
Right.
Yeah, but I learned a lot about show business and about what not to do.
Which was?
Just the production, looking at how it was put together. It was just like an example of like, well, this is a sinking ship.
Right.
Yeah. In the Red Sea, But I met a lot of amazing people and forged a lot of good friendships. And I think that we got reviewed, and I got really good reviews for it, and it sort of put me on the radar of the casting director who casted Wicked. So it directly led to me getting the national tour of Wicked, which took me out of LA, got me a lot closer to the New York world. And that was sort of the next move. Like after Wicked, I was like, well, now I could move to New York because I have that on my resume.
Yeah.
But I dropped out after 6 months because, again, I said, I want to be a rock star. I don't want to do this, I don't think. On that tour, I realized I want to do music, I think. I want to give it a shot.
Yeah. And was Idol the logical step?
It wasn't right after that. I came home, ran out of money after like 10 minutes, and worked another retail job, did some other gigs, and then the LA production of Wicked started, and I begged them to put me back in it, and they did, and I was in that for about 2 years.
Okay.
So while I was in that, I was starting to work on demos and work on writing, and I had a band and all that stuff, and then that year the Idol audition came about. I auditioned. After I got to the second round, they're like, you have to quit your job. You can't have any professional contracts in play. So I had to quit in order to get in front of the TV judges.
Yeah. Did you ever have any doubts during that period leading up to that?
I was like, quit my job? Like, this is like paying the bills. This is like, it was a high risk choice. And I was like, I got to try it.
Yeah.
If I don't, I'm going to regret it.
What about in general during that period, though, when you were doing Wicked and when you were with Val Kilmer? Were there ever periods in that sort of 7 or 8 years prior to Idol that you did doubt whether you would have a career or whether you would be able to keep doing this?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I figured at that point, like, I think I knew that I could be employed in the theater world at that point. I knew I could like book an ensemble job because that's mostly what I was doing. It was mostly in the chorus. I didn't get to do a lot of lead roles. And that started to frustrate me because I thought, I know I have more in me than this. I want more. And I was the understudy on Wicked, and they I only went on a couple of times because the guy was never sick. And then like when he would go on his vacation, they'd bring somebody in from New York. And I was like, what the hell? I'm rehearsing every week for this. So I just started feeling sort of underappreciated.
Okay.
And that was definitely part of my motivation. I was like, I'm just going to get on TV. Screw this. And I thought to myself, if I can get a little TV airtime, maybe then I'll move to New York and I'll have a little more of a profile and, figure something out.
I've seen that footage of your audition on Idol. Can you remember how you were feeling walking into that room?
Totally nervous. I said I wasn't,
You looked pretty good.
That's poker face. That's auditioning for years. I mean, I had experience with auditioning, and so like all the things that I did up until Idol, I felt prepared me for it.
Okay.
Full Slumdog Millionaire.
And then when you walked out of the room, do you remember how you were feeling?
Well, they said yes, okay, and I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Because there was so much writing on that. There's so much writing on that. And I knew it wasn't a done deal yet. I every step of the way that I stayed on that show, I thought, really? I didn't think I was a shoo-in. I did not think that I was the type of person that would connect on that show. I just didn't. I thought for sure they'd be like, oh, you're too flamboyant, because in the past they had kind of pointed people out for being that.
Yeah.
Or whatever. But I think once I picked a classic rock song and kind of put myself in that lane, all of a sudden I was in a lane. And having watched the show, being a fan of it for so many years, I kind of knew how to play that card.
Yeah.
The rocker guy. And I was like, okay, I think I get it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was it you?
Yeah, it was me, but it was me picking certain songs, you know?
Okay.
Curating that brand, if you will,
And we talked earlier about, I guess, that first taste of becoming tabloid fodder that came with the success of the series. And from what I understand, when you first came out to your parents at the age of 18, it was pretty stress-free. It went quite well, and they were very accepting.
My dad was like, yeah, I know. no shit. That's what he said to me.
So what was it like then, 10 years later, pretty much, to then... Because you got quite a lot of criticism from the gay media. Because you didn't deny that you were gay on the show, but you didn't really...
Wave a flag
about it. What was it like then to all of a sudden be getting this criticism about that?
I was a little confused because I thought, well, is that I remember thinking to myself, well, I never denied it. I mean, I think having been out and very comfortably out, especially in the arts, like for 10 years, I just didn't really think about it. I was in a bubble. I was in West Hollywood. doing musicals. Like, I didn't have any issues being who I was. It was part of my job. And to all of a sudden be, public fodder and sort of be a representation of a community on a public national television show, there were all these pressures that I wasn't prepared for. It was totally like, oh, right. I was a little blindsided by it. I was like, oh, shoot. It was an interesting learning curve too. It was a bit of a journey, but I look back on it and I'm like, wow, it was new.
Yeah.
It was new for me. And it was also new for the music industry. There weren't that many people in the contemporary pop scene doing like radio, let's get this on the radio kind of music that were out and gay.
Did it hurt you, that criticism?
I don't know. I mean, I think there were definitely some roadblocks and some obstacles, and there wasn't like a playbook to follow. So it was a lot of unknowns, but I don't know if I would change anything.
Mm-hmm. So I guess as you were perhaps putting that playbook together, what were some of the things that you would put in that playbook about how you would actually navigate this territory?
Well, now it feels out of date. That's the thing that's so funny, is that was 10 years ago, and now it's changed.
Yeah.
And now I look at where we're at now in the music industry and beyond, and it's like, oh, half the things that were issues for me 10 years ago don't even exist anymore. So that's actually great. I think there's been a lot of progress made.
Yeah.
And you've seen artists with very successful mainstream careers now that are sort of matter of fact about their sexuality, and no one really gives a shit. I mean, that's what it should have been. But again, it was a different setup than some of these artists get. And I mean, I would say that like the reveal of coming out, like I tried to use it to my advantage, I tried to spin it into a positive thing. I felt that it was exciting to be able to talk about being gay and my upbringing and all that stuff to the majority of fans who were straight. So in a way, it was sort of an education that I was being able to sort of give them, which was really cool.
Yeah. There was a quote in Time from you where you said that just being a gay artist in the music industry defeated you in moments. What were some of those moments where you felt defeated?
Well, I think that there were certain like choices that I was making, either song choices or the way I wanted to present myself visually, or video concepts, or performances on TV where people got scared.
Which people?
Because it was quote unquote too gay at that point. And to me, I didn't really think about it as the choices that I was making as actually being sexuality at all. It was just me being flamboyant. But because I was flamboyant and out, all of a sudden it was too gay. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And so I don't know. I think now it's just not an issue. It's so interesting.
No.
People are like, what? Who cares?
Yeah. But it's funny because back then, even your label, RCA, I think the cover which you chose for your entertainment, they were a little bit sketchy on, because they were thinking, well, how's the person in Middle America walking into Walmart going to relate to that cover? So you had to all of a sudden start thinking about
marketing fears. Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Well, it's hard as an artist too, because you want to just be creative and just do what your impulses tell you to do, and then you're in an industry that's so commercial, where those two things don't necessarily always fit together. Mm-hmm. And that's always been, for the last 10 years, it's always been this sort of like seesaw tug of war between integrity and commerce, and authenticity and marketing and all these things. And I've learned a lot.
Okay.
And the beautiful thing about where I'm now is that I feel like more than ever, I've been able to sort of reject a lot of the expectations and pressures of the business part of it, and just make an album that I like.
Yeah.
And just dress how I want. And just, and it's not to say that I was told what to do and I was puppeted before. I wasn't. But there was a lot of compromises. And now I don't want to do those compromises.
Yeah.
And I'm at a point now also in my career with the success of Queen, and sort of I've gotten to a point, I'm old enough and wise enough now to just be like, no.
Which is such a powerful word.
Yeah, I'm sorry, no. This is what I would like to do,
Because what you're saying about art, art and commerce, it is that tricky thing, particularly for a performer who's trying to make it. You've given these resources of a label or management or whatever who can push you to the next level, but you might have to compromise a little bit of what you stand for. Was there an internal battle about that?
A lot of internal battles. Yeah, I'm always in my head playing tennis. There was definitely, I mean, it's been a very interesting journey over the past 10 years.
Yeah.
But I think I just finally was like, okay, I got to a point where I started getting really disillusioned and kind of discouraged. And that's when I just went, you know what? I got to rethink things from the ground up. I got to rethink why I do this in the first place. And I knew instantly, I'm like, I still love music. I love making it. I love performing. That's it. That's all I need to pay attention to. Obviously, I have to understand the business stuff and all that. And a lot of that has to do with putting together the right team around you. But at the end of the day, I'm like, you know what? If it can't come back down to the love of it, like the reason why I want it in the first place, then I shouldn't be doing it. And maybe I have the luxury of saying that because because of being on the road with Queen and having that pay the bills, which is great.
Yeah.
That definitely helps. It takes some of the pressure off, but so be it.
Yeah.
That's the hand I've been dealt, and I'm going to try to like maintain some integrity.
After the break, Adam talks about joining Queen and what life is like aboard the Queen jet. Welcome back to Humans of Music and my interview with Adam Lambert. I once read a quote from Adam where he said that one of the great things about joining Queen is that it provided an escape from the judgment he felt he was subjected to around his personal life and solo career, which, given he was going to a job where he'd be judged against Freddie Mercury, one of the greatest frontmen of all time, highlighted to me just how acutely he felt that judgment around his own life, which is where we pick up the conversation.
It's almost, well, once I got past the expectation of like Freddie.
Yeah.
Because obviously, like, I was totally intimidated by that. It still is kind of like, whoa, it's hollowed ground. But I think now I know that over the last, 8 years, I've sort of earned my spot.
Sure.
And I've won enough people over, so I don't have to worry about it anymore. I
Yeah.
just go up there and I do my thing, and I work hard, and I sing the shit out of the songs and celebrate him and talk about Freddie. It's very important to acknowledge him as much as we can.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's helped me a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that to me highlighted how much scrutiny you must have been on beforehand, because as you were saying, as soon as you join Queen, you're getting compared or judged to the standard of Freddie Mercury. But you saw that as even like a little bit of an outlet from being judged from the rest of your life, presumably.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's both. It kind of goes both ways. On one hand, I'm singing great material that people love and know like the back of their hand. And when people know and love a song, it's half the job. That's half the battle. And as long as I stand up there and deliver the song, I win. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then, of course, the flip side is obviously being compared to Freddie and kind of being in that shadow and sort of winning over purists, which I fully understand. And making sure I don't imitate him, making sure I make it my own, but not too far from the original and all that. So it's both. But doing solo stuff is a totally different ballgame because you're selling somebody a brand new song.
Sure.
And especially once you've been out on the scene for more than a year or two, you're not new anymore.
Uh-huh.
And when you're not new anymore, you're less interesting unless you keep it interesting. So it's a game,
So tell me about the first time that you were in the room with Brian and Roger.
Well, they came on and performed on the finale of American Idol.
Yes. I mean, sorry, after that, when you actually decided that, okay, there might be something, maybe we should do something here.
We all exchanged information. Everybody kind of stayed in touch. And then I had my first album and first tour to do, solo tour. I had obligations to do that. And then the EMAs came up for MTV in Ireland. And I flew over there and we got in rehearsal and it just felt good. I was really excited.
What was the first song that you sang with him in that rehearsal?
I don't remember. It was a short set. We did sort of like a medley.
Yeah.
I know we did Rock You Champions and we did... I don't remember what else we did. I need to go back and watch it. And I remember thinking to myself, it is loud. Damn, he's loud. Brian is so loud.
How's it changed you as a person, the whole experience?
I've lost some hearing. No. I think it's made me a better musician, quite honestly. I think, they're so good and so pro at what they do. They know their songs. And the Queen catalog is so musical. It's so musical. So it's definitely improved my musicality, confidence, big time. And on a personal level, like being with Brian and Roger, they're like both really intelligent and have lived really interesting lives and have stories for days. And it's just nice to be around that.
And I think you've said in the past that they've taught you not to sweat the small stuff.
Yeah, I mean, they lead more by example than anything else. I mean, they it's not like they sit me down and lecture me a lot. It's not that type of relationship, which is nice too. It's not. I've never felt. I think I would be irritated if the relationship was, very, tell me what to do and tell me how to sing and how. They're very, very respectful of letting me explore.
When did you get to, like, when you were in Sydney recently and you were playing out at the Sydney Stadium, 70-odd thousand people? When did you get comfortable performing in front of that many people?
I mean, we've been doing arenas for 8 years, which is not quite that many people, so it does take a second. But we started this tour in Asia, and those were some big rooms as well. And I just remember being like, "Oh, right, I got to kick it up a couple notches." More people.
Is there a difference between a stadium and an arena? Like, you actually have to do something different?
It just feels bigger, yeah. And it's like it requires almost a little more energy because you have that many more people in the room. If you buy into that kind of stuff, like energetic stuff and spiritual kind of vibration and all that, there's a lot of people. So in a way, like if you're channeling it right and you're kind of riding the wave correctly, it's like plugging into a wall socket. Like you get all this energy.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And you're talking about the musicality that you've got from being in Queen. Can you hear that in Velvet? I
think Velvet was definitely like at first it was sort of unintentionally leaning into the same time period as Queen, and then sort of as more tracks started coming together, I recognized that could be helpful. The fact that there's like a shorter bridge between the two worlds than there has been. It's still pretty different than the Queen songs, but it feels like it's maybe of a similar era,
right? But even in the songwriting, I mean, from performing these Queen songs for however many years, you must have learned a thing or two about songwriting.
Yeah, absolutely. And what makes a good song.
Yeah.
And also the cool thing about Queen is that they've done like every genre.
Right.
Which is really cool. So in essence, yes, they're classic rock, but they're also pop in that way. Because they didn't stick to just one sound.
Yeah.
I mean, they were pop when the word pop wasn't cool, but it's still pop.
Yeah. What's life like on the Queen jet?
It's very civilized. A glass of wine with lunch. We chit-chat. I mean, the jet's great because all four of us face each other, three of us, and then usually there's a chair for the manager or, a wife of one of the two guys or somebody. And we always just shoot the shit. We tend to just talk about current events or the weather. We make a lot of great small talk.
Okay.
Small talk that has some weight, that like we talk about real stuff. And then other times we'll dig into, like the show the night before, oh, that was funny that this happened, and we'll laugh about something, or if something went wrong, what happened there? What was that about? Did you notice?
Do things go wrong on stage with Queen?
Little things that the audience probably wouldn't know, but like little things happen.
Yeah. So just before we finish up, there was another quote which I read of yours where you said there are so many things I didn't realize before getting into it being the entertainment business. What do you think some of the biggest things were that you didn't realize that you've had to come to terms with?
I mean, I think if you don't have the right team around you in the music industry in particular, you're screwed. It's everything. I don't know everything. That's like one of the most important things that I've learned over the years, and it's hard to admit that you're not sure of something in an industry where you're expected to sort of be a peacock and puff up and seem really confident all the time. To realize that there's something you need help with or you don't know, that's not always easy to make that switch, especially being in the public eye. So I think finding the right people to work with is the most important thing.
Okay.
Because it can make or break your career. It really can.
Yeah.
Or people, and in that team, people that will tell you the truth, that will tell you what you don't want to hear, is so important. Being around people that are just yes people all the time, it's not going to work.
Right.
Yeah.
And what you were talking about then about that, I guess, puffing up like a peacock, that persona, Did you have to learn how to, when the door closes, to not
Depuff.
do that? Yeah, to depuff.
To unpuff myself. Yeah, and that's not easy, especially when you're on tour and you're performing for 60,000 people, and then you're on tour and you get back to your hotel room, you close the door, and you're by yourself. And it is definitely like, whoo, it's a bit of a switch. It's hard, and this is something a lot of performers talk about because it's a common thing. It takes a while to get used to that high and that low. The up and the down.
What helps you?
I'm used to it now. I've gotten used to it now, so I'm not as thrown off by it. But if I'm not on tour for a while, I start feeling a little like, and then when I get back on a tour, what I've noticed is that I get this initial like jolt of like life. It's very charging.
Okay.
Yeah.
Last thing. So Jaxsta is about giving credit where credit is due. Who would you give credit to for helping you get where you are today?
I had a teacher named Lynn Broyles when I was a teenager. She was a voice teacher. And so I started taking voice lessons from her. And then she started developing her own theater company. And we got along really well. She was very funny. I made her laugh. She also, this was early on. This was, I was probably like 14, I think, when I started working with her. And I think she recognized like who and what I was before I could kind of put it into terms and come to terms with it and put it into words. And so she sort of allowed and created a very safe space for me to be creative and expressive. And kind of cut my teeth on a lot of like classic movies and artists, especially like the gay staples, like the Barbra Streisand and Liza Minnelli and Judy Garland, like the cliche kind of Cher, these cliche kind of gay icons. She kind of introduced me to them before I even understood that they were gay icons.
Yeah.
And she also like respected my talents. And she was one of the people early on that said, you're really good at this, this, and this. And let me run with it. Let me design things for her productions and design flyers and sets and costumes and direct and get really involved, And that gave me a lot of confidence and made me feel like, okay, I'm tapping into something. And I do think like as the next few years unroll, I want to get more into other aspects of entertainment.
Okay.
Yeah.
In terms of doing some of that stuff you mentioned,
maybe
design
producing, maybe just creating stuff.
Yeah.
Even if I'm not the subject of it, just being behind the scenes might be really fun too.
Okay.
Yeah.
So she was really pivotal in your life.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Adam, thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you so much. Good questions.
And that's it for another episode of Humans of Music. A big thanks to Adam for his time, and thank you for listening. This episode was engineered by Cameron Henry and mixed by Lachlan Mitchell from Parliament Studios in Annandale. The incidental music and theme song were written and performed by Sam Lockwood. Please remember to subscribe to the Humans of Music podcast so you never miss an episode, or even better, feel free to share it amongst your friends and jump online and rate and review it. And remember, for all your music credits and to get the story behind the music, head to jaxsta.com. And while you're there, sign up for a free 30-day trial of Jaxsta Pro, the essential tool for all music industry professionals. Until the next episode of Humans of Music, I'm Rod Yates. Thanks for listening.